Tonight we turn our attention to a royal scene stealer, someone who has captured hearts worldwide, yet often remains quietly in the background. That's right, we're talking about Prince George. For most of us, he's that polite, composed boy at every public appearance, always smiling, always following tradition. The eldest child of Prince William and Princess Catherine. But recently, something happened that made the world stop and take notice. A young prince, usually seen but rarely heard, spoke his mind, and it was shocking. Even a future king has nerves. Imagine being just a child, knowing that your every move is observed by millions, that the world expects perfection from you at all times. Yet despite this pressure, Prince George has begun to show a side of himself that feels real, human, and relatable. And it all started with a bold, honest statement at a recent public event. So, what was it that Prince George said? It wasn't about royal protocol. It wasn't a rehearsed statement. It was something personal, something that resonated deeply with people around the world. In a calm, confident voice, he addressed an issue that affects everyone, no matter who they are or where they live: the health of our planet. If we don't take care of the earth, who will? Simple words but powerful. Coming from someone so young, they carried weight. They weren't just words, they were a message, a call to action. A reminder that even the youngest among us can care, can notice, can speak up. The palace and the world took notice. Conversations erupted on social media, in living rooms, and around boardroom tables. People were inspired by his courage. Others debated whether a child should make such statements. But in that moment, one thing became clear. Prince George is no longer just a background figure in the royal story. He is beginning to step forward, not just as a future king, but as a voice of conscience, curiosity, and bold honesty. And this is only the beginning. Behind the calm, composed exterior lies a young boy navigating pressures, expectations, and a very public life. Tonight, we start to peel back the curtain to reveal the real Prince George. Thoughtful, emotional, and surprisingly candid. Join us as we dive deeper into his story, uncovering the boy behind the title, and exploring what this bold statement could mean for the future of the royal family. Prince George has always been in the public eye, yet most people only see what he is taught to show: calm, polite, and composed. A wave here, a smile there, a respectful nod to tradition. But behind that poised exterior is a young boy growing up with responsibilities and pressures, unlike any other child his age. Think about it. While his classmates worry about homework, soccer games, or hanging out with friends, George is already thinking about the weight of history, the expectations of a future throne, and what it means to one day serve a nation. Even at just 11 years old, he understands that his life is different. His childhood is filled not just with play, but with lessons on leadership, responsibility, and the legacy of the monarchy. Despite all that, he is still a kid. He laughs, he plays, he explores, and he enjoys the simple joys of childhood, especially with his siblings, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis. He loves sports like soccer and rugby, encouraged by his father, Prince William, who himself is deeply involved in the world of football. Outdoor adventures and nature are other passions, moments where he can be just George the boy, not the future king. Yet even with this balance, George's recent statement showed us something we rarely see: his thoughts, his concerns, and his willingness to express them publicly. For someone trained to follow rules and stay composed, stepping forward and speaking about real-world issues that matter deeply, was extraordinary. It was a glimpse into his inner world, curious, empathetic, and aware. For the royal family, this openness is a reflection of the upbringing his parents have given him. Prince William, shaped by his own experiences as a child, under the public eye, and the lasting influence of Princess Diana, emphasizes empathy, service, and responsibility. Catherine, with her warmth and relatability, teaches George the importance of communication, emotional awareness, and understanding people outside of palace walls. Together, they nurture a young royal who is not just learning protocol, but also learning how to care, think, and speak. In that brief moment when George shared his concerns about the planet, he reminded the world that even someone living a life of privilege can feel responsibility, and even a child can have a voice worth hearing. Behind the crown, the cameras, and the tradition, there's a thoughtful, reflective boy, one whose mind and heart are already shaping the kind of leader he may become. And as we continue, we'll explore how George's life, his education, experiences, and unique upbringing has prepared him not just to inherit a throne, but to understand the world he will one day lead. From the moment Prince George was born, the world watched every detail of his life unfold. His first photos, his christening, his first day at school, all carefully documented, every smile analyzed. But beneath the headlines and photo ops is a quieter story, one of careful balance between royal duty and the desire for a normal childhood. Prince William and Princess Catherine have worked tirelessly to give George as normal a life as possible within the limits of royalty. Unlike previous generations, who grew up behind palace walls, George has been allowed to explore the real world, attending regular schools, playing sports and interacting with children outside royal circles. It's not just about learning facts and figures. It's about learning how to live, how to connect, and how to understand the lives of ordinary people. At Thomas's Battersea, the London school he attended, George was treated just like any other student. His classmates called him George, rather than Your Royal Highness, and he carried his own backpack, joined in school plays, and faced the same small challenges every child faces: making friends, doing homework, and finding his place in the world. Teachers described him as polite, curious, and surprisingly down to earth. But even with this normalcy, the shadow of the crown is never far away. George knows his life is different. From an early age, he's been gradually introduced to his future responsibilities. Small lessons about history, service, and empathy are woven into his education at home. His parents, especially William, ensure he understands not just the what of being a royal, but the why service matters, why compassion is strength, and why humility will always be his greatest guide. It's easy to forget that behind the polished public image is a child who sometimes feels the weight of expectations. Yet George's parents have made sure that he also experiences laughter, fun, and freedom. They take him camping, teach him about nature, and let him run, fall, and get muddy. Because to them, real strength doesn't come from being royal, it comes from being human first. Every stage of George's upbringing reflects a new vision for the monarchy, one that blends tradition with modern reality. And as he grows, that balance becomes clearer, the making of a future king who listens, feels, and understands the world he'll one day serve. It was supposed to be a routine appearance, a clean-cut royal event, polished and predictable. Cameras rolled, the crowd smiled, and the press waited for another formal wave from the young prince. But what happened that day would turn a quiet public engagement into a global headline. Standing beside his father, Prince George took the microphone for what everyone assumed would be a few simple, rehearsed words. Yet what he said wasn't rehearsed, it was heartfelt. In a calm but confident voice, he spoke about something far greater than himself: the planet, the future, and responsibility. If we don't take care of the earth now, there might not be one left for us later, he said. Short sentence, but it carried the force of truth, innocence, and awareness. For a child raised under the weight of royal expectations, it was more than just a comment. It was a reflection of everything he'd been taught about compassion, service, and courage. The audience was stunned. Reporters fell silent before the sound of applause filled the air. Within hours, his words spread across the world. Social media platforms flooded with admiration and debate. Some praised his maturity and conviction, calling him a leader in the making. Others questioned whether a royal child should be speaking about such topics. But regardless of opinions, one thing became undeniable. Prince George had found his voice. Behind palace doors, the reaction was measured. The royal family is famously cautious about statements that touch on public issues, but even they couldn't ignore the impact. Insiders say Prince William and Catherine were both proud and a little surprised. They hadn't expected George to speak so boldly, but they understood why he did. For them, it was a sign that their son wasn't just absorbing lessons, he was living them. That single moment marked a turning point. The world stopped seeing George as just another royal child standing beside his parents. They began to see him as a thinking, feeling young person with his own perspective, a bridge between the ancient traditions of royalty and the modern realities of our world. It was a glimpse into the future, a future where kings may not just rule but inspire. To understand Prince George, You first have to understand the two people shaping him behind the palace gates, Prince William and Princess Catherine. Their parenting style is unlike anything the royal family has seen before. It's modern yet grounded, structured yet compassionate. Together, they've built a foundation for George that blends tradition with tenderness, preparing him not just to wear a crown but to deserve it. Prince William grew up under an intense spotlight, witnessing firsthand the cost of fame and the pain of public scrutiny. Losing his mother, Princess Diana, at such a young age taught him lessons no royal tutor ever could, about empathy, humility, and the importance of staying true to oneself. It's those same lessons he now passes on to his eldest son. From William, George learns responsibility, the quiet kind that doesn't seek attention. William often tells him stories about his grandmother, Diana, not as a princess, but as a mother who cared deeply for people, who visited hospitals, hugged children, and spoke to the homeless as equals. He wants George to know that leadership isn't about power, it's about service. Princess Catherine, on the other hand, brings warmth and emotional depth into George's world. She's hands-on, deeply involved in her children's lives. From school drop-offs to bedtime routines, Catherine encourages George to express his feelings, to understand empathy not as a royal duty, but as a human instinct. She believes that kindness and curiosity will be his strongest tools when he one day faces the world as king. The couple's parenting philosophy is simple: ground first, guide second. Despite their royal titles, they strive to give George a sense of normalcy, family dinners, chores, playtime outdoors, and moments without cameras. These ordinary experiences build the foundation for extraordinary character. Their approach has already begun to show. George's calm demeanor, his confidence in public, and his thoughtful statement about the planet all reflect the balance between William's quiet strength and Catherine's nurturing grace. He's growing up with a rare mix of royal discipline and emotional intelligence, something that could redefine the future of the British monarchy. In a world that often sees royalty as distant and polished, Prince George's upbringing tells a different story, a story of love, resilience, and a deliberate effort to raise a leader who listens, feels, and understands the people he'll one day serve. The world didn't expect Prince George's words to leave such a mark. But within hours, his short statement had become a global conversation. News outlets replayed the clip. Environmental groups praised his courage. And even political leaders took note of how a child, one barely in his teens, had managed to say what so many adults hesitate to express. But the real power of that moment wasn't in its virality. It was in its sincerity. People weren't moved because a royal spoke. They were moved because a child spoke truthfully, without agenda, without polish, and without fear. It reminded the world that wisdom doesn't always come with age, and leadership doesn't always wear a crown. For the royal family, the response was carefully measured but quietly proud. Insiders say that behind closed doors, Prince William and Catherine spoke openly with George about what his words meant. They reminded him that speaking up carries both influence and responsibility, that every word, especially from someone in his position, has the power to inspire or divide. It was a moment of growth, a new chapter in his understanding of what it truly means to be heard. As the dust settled, one truth became clear. Prince George represents more than the future of a monarchy. He represents the changing spirit of it, a generation that values empathy over formality, authenticity over protocol, and connection over distance. Every time he steps into the public eye now, people look for more than a polite wave or a charming smile. They look for signs of the young leader he is becoming. And though his journey has only just begun, there's something unmistakably hopeful about it. A glimpse of a monarchy that may one day feel more human than ever before. Because if this young prince has already learned to speak from the heart, imagine what kind of man he'll become when he learns to lead with it. So perhaps that single, unexpected statement wasn't just a child's remark at all. Maybe it was something deeper, an echo of what the world has been waiting for. A new voice, a new vision, and the quiet beginning of a different kind of royal story. In a world that often looks at royalty through jewels and tradition, Prince George has reminded us of something simpler and far more powerful: humanity. Behind the polished image and ancient crown lies a boy who feels, who questions, and who dares to speak when his heart tells him to. His words may have been few, but their echo was immense. They signaled the beginning of a new kind of legacy, one not built on ceremony, but on sincerity. A young prince standing on the edge of childhood and destiny has already begun to reshape what leadership can look like. Perhaps that's the true story here. Not the grandeur of a monarchy, but the quiet awakening of a generation that will lead with empathy, courage, and truth. Because sometimes the smallest voice in the room carries the greatest hope for the future.